Hi everyone, Leon, and good morning everybody. And first of all, thank Srinivasa sir and other organizing committee doing it for the invitation. So I'm going to present Buddhist archaeology in Sri Lanka and the Rajagala excavation project. We have two kind of sites in Sri Lanka. It is a historical sites and prehistorical site. I think it's the same as it is in India. And I want to say that the most of historical sites belong to the Buddhist archaeology. But there's at least a small relation we have with the Buddhism and archaeological site, historical archaeological sites. It means that the ties between archaeology and Buddhism very high. So I'm presenting very limited slide because of the time. So all all the sites belong to the Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism. You know we have Theravada Buddhism, but in the 8th century AD we received the Vajrayana or Mahayana. Until then, so all these sites belong to the Theravada Buddhism, and those are very popular sites. We have 7 World Heritage Sites in Sri Lanka, and the 5 sites belong to the Buddhist archaeology. So the rest of it is also the same. And this is Polonnaruwa. Yeah, I know the most of colleagues in audience, they have visited this lot of sites. So we see here the very famous site in Sri Lanka is also it was Buddhist site in 3rd century BC. Before the King Kashyapa, it was a Buddhist site. Now it's not a Buddhist site. So I'm turning to Rajagala. Rajagala is a very recent name. It was the Giri Kumbila Tissa temple. So Giri means mountain, Kumbila means crocodile. You can see that crocodile laying so that's why people say the Giri Kumbila, the crocodile mountain. So why I select this site, I will explain. This is the location in eastern province of Sri Lanka. This is India. So it's located in the dry zone. And why I brought here this topic, the Rajagala project, we are working together with India. So this is the colleagues who's helping to me to carry on the excavation in Rajagala, Professor Simbe, Vice Chancellor of Kent College. Also Gambhir sir and Heman is still in the audience, so other colleagues from several universities in India. So that's why I select this topic to this audience. So some of them here. Yes, the excavation. Yes, we have 2 kinds of excavation in Rajagala. One for the conservation purpose, the second for the looking for prehistorical phase. So this is the prehistorical excavation. Before that, I have to explain that we completed 3 sessions now with collaboration Indian universities and more than 50 excavation for the purpose of conservation now we have completed. So this is the biggest Buddhist monastery in Sri Lanka. Nearly 1,000 hectares covered and 700 sites we have unmapped, and also the more than 100 of caves. It's not like Indian caves, it's a natural caves. They have motif and with a large number of inscriptions. So it is a forest monastery. It's still in the forest. Now nearly 700. It is belong to forest. No one there. Around nearly 600 kilometers, no people there. So every year the Indian colleagues come in Sri Lanka, and we are live in the middle of the site with the wild elephant and hundred of other animals. So it is calm and quiet sites in Sri Lanka. It's the biggest one, and very important architectural remains still preserved. It's like a virgin time, because 800 years no one went there. It's preserved by the forest. So this is the map. So yes, I will go direct to the artifact. So we have painted from prehistoric time to the 13th century AD. This is a prehistoric art in the first one. It is like the symbol of Telangana. It's animal, I think, deer. So this is the 2 deers. The rest of the other 3, it is belong to the Buddhist painting, but we can't understand which kind of topics are there because it's now erosion and vanish. So we have the more than hundreds of caves. I said it at the beginning, it's not like Indian caves. We don't have that carving like, you know, like the rock cut cave. We don't have, sir. Just only this kind of thing. It's more than 100. So, you know the wonderful thing, more than 2,300 years preserving this cave, we lost only the door frame of the wooden door frame. So you can see, the more than 2,300 years old. It's still in the virgin situation. So that's why I say this is a very important cave to Sri Lankan Buddhists, not only that Indian Buddhist archaeology as well. So it's still preserved. And we have the air-conditioned 24 caves in this site. At those times also, they say the Sitalena. Sitalena means air-conditioned the cave. Still, we can feel the air-conditioned situation. It is that all the site located in the very dry zone in Sri Lanka, and nearly 35 to 14 degrees every year. But inside the cave, nearly 20 degrees. That's why I say they are Sitalena. They arrange a very proper arrangement to bring the cool air through the mountain. It's wonderful technology, but very simple. So we can excavation and conservation these ways. Yes, this is a huge one. So actually, there are more than 700 sites, I say, the building, including building. Some of we can't identify what purpose they built, because there were 500 Arhat monk according to our chronicles. So still we are doing some research what purpose they use. And this is important stupa. It's very small. You have relation with this stupa. I am talking to the Indian people here, Indian colleagues, Indian scholars. Yeah, what kind of relation do you have? It is the place where the Arhat mined the relics, the son of the great king Ashoka. So this is the inscription. It's written by 3rd century BC. It's very clearly mentioned the Arhat mined the relics inside that stupa. This is only one inscription we found in Sri Lanka, that Arhat Mahinda died in Sri Lanka. There's only one inscription. So that's why I am saying at the beginning, Arunachal is the more important site to Sri Lanka Buddhism and the Indian Buddhism. So now we are going to concerns, and we found number of stupa. Gadmitsa and Hemant, they are recording these sites over the last 3 years. It's still not completed because huge site. Now we recently conserved that stupa according to the Sanchi model. Actually, it was starting because this is site belonged to the 3rd century BC. It is very similar to the same era of the Arhat Mahinda. So rest of several stupa there. I think Gadmitsa more than 500 small stupa we can identify the next year. So still stupa there. So we have the Bodhi tree, but we don't know the Bodhi tree where it is from. We hope so. It is from Anuradhapura. The the Bodhi tree, which is established by Arhat Sangamitra, the daughter of Ashoka. So this is another relation with Kalinga. You know, Kalinga Maga came to Sri Lanka and destroyed every Buddhist monastery. This is one of evidence, and it's an unfinished Buddha statue, it's a huge one. So we hope that when the Kalinga come in, they stop everything and they run away. After that, the sites not yet used, it's stopped. And after 800 years later, we start again the excavation. So still the stupa is laying in the site. So it's about the drinking water purpose they made, and more than 2 millenniums, we can use that. We can see that natural water streams there. More than 200 workers working every day. We are preparing the drinking water from there. It's been more than 2,300 the flowing that the small natural water. It is a perfect good water supply resource. So it is for the drinking purpose, very close to the Almas refectory hall. So this is only one hall in Sri Lanka which built the rounded shape. It's also very important thing. It is, I think, there should be some relation with India. So it is, I'm thrown to the audience to do some research with us. So this is the watch. So yeah, I put there. Is in front of the Almasol, because you know, according to there, the bhikkhu can't get lunch after midday. So at that time they don't have watch or mobile or anything. So this is the watch, and that's sundial. We found more than 8 sundial over Sri Lanka. This is important one, and it is a rounded one. Also the ruins is rounded. And this is a tank made for the monk. We recently we renovated. Now we are full of water these days, and the beauty of the site. Now I'm turned to the prehistoric phase. So this is we excavated we completed 3 sessions now. We found the large number of artifacts. This is all the historical phase. And some terracotta beads, coins, and some tiles, ornament, some iron objects we found there, and 1,000 of lithic, and it is belong to Mesolithic era in Sri Lanka, and the 1,000 of animal and human bones. So now at this moment, still ongoing our research. At this moment, we found these kind of animals, bones inside our cave excavation. Even elephant bones, the burning bones we found. So it's means they have eaten. So it's normal in the prehistoric era. So other animal. And wonderful thing is, still we can find this animal around the cave. Still we can find. So some of fishes from sea and freshwater. Also the shark teeth we found. It is for the ornament purpose. And this kind of freshwater, I think I have 5 minutes. Is this, madam? 2 minutes. Yes, okay, madam. Is enough. So this kind of animal we already recognize. This is the core one. It's nearly 10-15 kilograms heavy, that fish. And they live in very deep water, but they have eaten. Also that birds, and they have eaten more python. I don't know, now we are not eating python in Sri Lanka, but at that time, lot of bones we found, some shells, and more than 24 fruit we recognized last year, and nearly 6 yams, and more than 50 leaves we can eat around that monastery. I say it's a forest. So it's going to be a World Heritage Site very soon. Also, we are going to introduce that site as a meditation center. for the national and international. I think Deccan College will help us. All the colleagues from Deccan College are helping us to nominate as a World Heritage Site. It is the very best sample in South Asia to do the big research. Still, we unearthed only 5% of the site, and rest of sites all are welcome. And this year we finished our session, and next year we will start the fourth excavation session. Last year we invited many universities in India, so this time also, next time also, I am try to give the invitation. I am the coordinator of this excavation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor. It was a wonderful presentation in the sense that I'm so happy that an archaeologist related its monuments and structures to subsistence and environment. That's very unique. And thanking you so much for keeping to the time. I hope that you will forgive me, being a Buddhist, that I am not being too draconian. Now I would like to invite Ms. Laura Giolano. She's the curator, Indian and Southeast Asian section of the National Museum of Oriental Art in Roma, Italy. And she will present a paper, The Archery Competition of Siddharth in Gandhara Art, Buddhist and Epic Traditions in Comparison. Very interesting. Please start.
First of all, let me thank Professor Srinivasan and Professor Gambhi for inviting me to attend this conference. It's really a privilege for me to learn about Telangana archaeological discoveries and to be here with distinguished scholars from all over India. As it has been said, I'm curator of the National Museum of Oriental Art, now Museum of Civilization, where more than 4,000 sculptures of Gandharan art are conserved, some of them coming from the excavation conducted by the Italians in the Swat region, and particularly in the Buddhist site of Budkara, Pand, and Said Sharif. Since many years, different kinds of researches on this collection are going on from the archaeological, technical, and iconographical point of view, especially in comparison with relief sketches from other museums, from other excavation, and with literary source. And even conservation and also training of local people are going on in Swat region. What I'm presenting here is really related with a particular scene of the archery competition of Siddharth and Gandharan art. Is just a small example of the type of investigation we are all the team is carrying on. So, among the Gandharan reliefs, we find scenes of athletic competition, many depiction in wrestling and archery, as well as, less often, cutting through bundles of bamboo with a sword, riding, tug-of-war, slingshot, etc. Most of the scenes depicted in the reliefs find equivalence in the narratives in the sources. In fact, some texts, in particular the Sangha Vedavastu, the Vinaya de Mula Sarvastivali, the Lalita Vistara, Mahavastu, the Chinese translation of the Abhinishramana Sutra, but also other Chinese sources, dwell on the episode of the contest organized to win the hand of Gopa or Yashoda, during which the young Siddhartha gives proof of his superior innate abilities in athletic competitions and many other arts. Here, considering the account of the archery competitions in the Buddhist hagiographic text, one of the few competitions the sources dwell upon with detailed descriptions, we shall focus on a particular scene of the episode in the Gandharan reliefs. First, however, let me briefly outline the environment in which the contest entered into by Siddhartha took place. Looking into the tradition the episode is associated with, and the role the archery competition had in the course of the event. Often, demonstration of participants' heroic virtues took place on the occasion of the Birya Shulka Svayambara, the self-choice with mainly teeth as bride prize. Characterized by public competition, in which the suitors were to prove their skill in the harder work to obtain the hand of a girl of noble lineage, a custom well known to us through the Ramayana and Mahabharata. It is in the circumstances of the Svayambara requiring a heroic feat that we should understand the account of the contest engaged in by Siddhartha in the sources and the scene of competitions, including the archery contest depicted in the Gandharan reliefs. As said before, of all the trials organized for this contest, the archery competition is one of the few the hagiographic texts dwell upon with detailed descriptions. And indeed, together with the wrestling match, it is the most often depicted in Gandhara reliefs, showing the favor this discipline met in the Hindu world. Moreover, it is recurrent in the Vedic tradition, being the task that most often has to be passed to win the hand of the young woman. Supremacy in this contest, possibly more than in other cases, reflects the royal and warlike values of the winner. In the case of the Buddha legend, the archery competition is the crucial task faced by Siddhartha to be able to win Gopa or Yashoda. On the Gandharan reliefs, the scene is depicted with three different figurative schemes, which are the ones we can see in the slides. But here we shall deal only with the third one, that one, the most frequently encountered, showing one or two standing archers, turned towards the left, drawing their bows and aiming at a target hung on a palm tree or raised on a pole. The reliefs belonging to this type of composition show numerous variants in the case of the figures surrounding the principal personage. They may simply be people observing the competition, as is the case in the relief of the Jimmy Boston Pinto collection, where the group of onlookers consists of four main figures, two standing and two seated. In other examples, on the other hand, the figures surrounding the archer seem to be taking an active part in the competition as assistants. Such is the case of a figure to the right of the Bodhisattva, shown holding his elbow with both hands as if helping to pull back the bowstring in the relief in the British Museum, and in another one in the Hirayama Silk Road Museum. In yet another example in the British Museum, the male figure to the right of the Bodhisattva is holding an arrow. Particularly interesting in this relief is the figure depicted to the left, between the target and the Bodhisattva himself. It is a tail monkey holding the quiver, or, as suggested by itself, a support for the bow. A kneeling monkey facing to the left is also facing to the left and holding a rod with the target raised on the top of it, is also depicted in a relief from Saidu Sharif in the Svat Valley, now conserved in the National Museum of Oriental Art. You can see the monkey there on that. And Zwalford observed that a similar figure with a carved tail is possibly represented on a relief from Malakand, preserved in Peshawar. Again, a monkey supporting a target seemed to be represented on a relief from the Government Museum of Chennai. In some specimens, however, the figure in the line of fire is a young boy holding the quiver with protruding arrows, a cylindric object on a rod with a target raised on the top of it. In other cases, the identification of the monkey is more doubtful, but possible. It is on this figure and on its presence in Siddhartha's archery competition that we will later shortly focusing on. Attention will be given now to the comparison between the textual and the figurative tradition to consider if and how they are interrelated, or if, at least in some cases, we should hypothesize the influence of other sources. For lack of time, I'm not going to describe the different versions of the archery competition in the Buddhist text. I very well know. But we shall just observe here that among the figurative details corresponding closely with the textual descriptions in numerous reliefs, we found the palm tree with the target hanging on it. This image encapsulates the image of the 7 palm trees penetrated by the arrow of the Bodhisattva, while the target may be identified as the iron drum mentioned in Sankabheda Vastu of the Vinaya of the Mula Sarvasivalin and the Lalita Vishtara Mahavastu and the Abhinishkamana Sutra. It should be noted that on these Gandharan reliefs, the episode recounted in the Sankabheda Vastu of the spring of water welling up when the Bodhisattva's pharaoh plunges into the ground is not depicted. Instead, it occurs in Ajanta Cave 16, where a Naga is represented, bringing the pharaoh back to Siddhartha. You can see him there. And in Kizil Stairs Cave, where beside the Naga also the well is shown. But there is another detail that seems to be derived from another version of the story since lost, filling out the overall sense of the image. What significance, in fact, is to be attributed to the monkey holding a quiver or holding up a rod with a target depicted in some reliefs? Is it a trained monkey? It will be the only one represented in Gandharan art, and it looks a little bit strange because this figure occurs only and exactly in the representation of the archery competition. But there is also another possibility. As also Zwar suggested, the association of a monkey with the Bodhisattva during the archery contest echoes the legend of Rama, suggesting the possibility of an interaction between the two stories. We may wonder whether, in the case of these reliefs, rather few actually, the artist took inspiration from a version of the archery competition episode passed down orally, that had drawn some context from an original core and local tradition of the Rama legend, or simply the artist added a monkey to the scene as a sign of connection between the two tales. Actually, this is hardly surprising, since points of contact between the two narratives also emerged in Buddhist hagiographic literature, which, in relation to Siddhartha's contest, uses a series of topoi, characteristic of the Ramayana and more generally of the Indian epic. For example, the motive of the extremely heavy bow, which can be drawn only by the hero and before belonged to illustrious figures, Siddhartha grandfather Simhananu in the case of the Buddhist legend, and Shiva in the case of the Ramayana, for example. Thus, the proof of superhuman ability shown by Siddhartha, whose arrow shoots through all the targets, penetrating the 7 palm trees and the iron bore image to stick into the ground, finds parallel in the episode of the Ramayana recounted in the Kishkinta Kanda and represented in a relief of the Kailasanatha temple of Ellora, during which, to demonstrate to Sugriva his skills as a warrior, Rama releases an arrow which shoots through 7 palm trees and pierces the ground, after which it reappears in his quiver. While various points of contact emerge between the accounts of Siddhartha's contest and Indian epic tales, suggesting a very early origin for this narrative model, it is in the literature of the Jataka that parallels with the Ramakatha stand out in a particular telling way. As we know, some of the Jatakas represent Buddhist version of certain tales also included in the Ramayana of Valmiki, by Valmiki. Among the many, we may recall in particular the Shama Jataka, but the story of Rama was also known to the author of the Vasantara Jataka. In Agatha, he incidentally named Sita, famous for her devotion to her husband, and in the description of Prince Vasantara's departure into exile, it recalled Rama's departure from Ayodhya, as recounted in the Ayodhya Kanda in the Ramayana. Buddhist Literature also elaborated its own version of the Ramakatha in the well-known and studied Dasharatha Jataka, generally considered one of the earliest written accounts of the legend. The story of Rama is also recounted in the Anamakaraja Jataka, the former birth of an unnamed king, Yankev, a text which unfortunately has not survived in the original version, occurring in a tale in the Sat Paramita Sangraha Sutta, translated into Chinese in the 251 AD by the Sogdian monk Kansen Hui. The Chinese version of this story contains many episodes corresponding to those of the Ramayana without mentioning the names of the characters, and can be considered an abridged version of the prime of Valmiki. Thus, we may now take it that one or a number of Ramakatha cores and of the tales that were eventually included in the poem of Valmiki found a place and interpretation in the Buddhist literature, at least until the early century AD, attested by the fact that this story is of common occurrence in Indian culture, a legend that is not only Brahmanic, but, as argued by Reynolds, is better understood as an Indian, Southeast Asian story that has been crystallized in context of a variety of traditions, including, not limited to Hinduism. It was drawn upon by various religious traditions, including the Jain, interpreting the singer's tales in the light of their own values and codes of conduct. There remains, I believe, much to investigate in this field. Here, the Gandhara representation of the archery competition, where a monkey appears in aid of Siddhartha, could add a fifth piece in the long tradition of contamination considered above. It was before conjectured, following Vladimir Swarf, that for this particular representation, the Gandharan artist took inspiration from a version of the contest in Slost. Nevertheless, the possibility remains that, aware of the similarities between the tale of Siddhartha's feat with the bow and that of Rama, the artist added the monkey simply as a sign of this association. Furthermore, if our conjectures should find confirmation, this representation could be considered amongst the first figurative, albeit indirect, reference to the Ramakatha, the earliest representative iconographic evidence relating to which can be safely dated back to the Gupta period, unless we do not want to take into consideration the coin of Ubishka, where is depicted a figure interpreted as Rama by Joy Craig. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All our speakers are very kind and giving opportunity to all scholars to present their work. May I now finally call upon Karma Tensingh from Telangana to Gujarat to Sri Lanka, then imaginarily, metaphorically to Pakistan via Italy. We are now to Bhutan, right? So Karma is a senior architect, head archaeology section, Division of Conservation of Heritage Sites in Bhutan, and he will make a presentation on Dzong's portraits of different era. You will explain what it means.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Buddha Project and Department of Heritage for inviting me to present a paper from Bhutan. So my presentation will basically be the works that are undertaken in Bhutan, particularly focusing on Dzongs, which means fortifications or fortress of different era. Now you must be already wondering why Dzongs in this seminar of archaeology in Buddhism. So to set the context, I'd like to introduce Bhutan and Buddhism in Bhutan. So Bhutan is a small and a tiny kingdom which is located in between the two most populated and powerful country, China in the north and India in the south. So as you all know, Buddha was born in Nepal, Lumbini, and thereafter Buddha got enlightenment in India, and consequently the Buddhism, his teaching, spread it all across the region and countries. Likewise, the Buddhism in the history records that Buddhism in Bhutan arrived as early as 6th and 7th century in the form of Vajrayana Buddhism. So, in the 7th century, history records that Songtsen Gampo, he is the Buddhist religious king of the Tibet. He has built 108 temples, Buddhist temples, over the paths of Demones who was obstructing propagation of Buddhism. So, what happened was the Champal Hagam, which is in Bhutan, fell on the left knee of the Demones, and Kichul Hagam on the right knee. So these are the pictures of the Champal Hagam on the left and right Kichul Hagam, which is still surviving and preserved in Bhutan. So likewise, in the 8th century, Guru Padmasambhava, he is referred to as the second Buddha, visited Bhutan on the invitation of King Sindhu Raja of Buntang in the central Bhutan. So likewise, many Buddhist scholars visited Bhutan. For instance, in 13th century, Lam Phajo Drugum Shipo, he is also a Buddhist master, arrived in Bhutan, and many more came to Bhutan, and thus the Buddhism flourished in Bhutan. So the most prominent figure is the 17th century Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyal, who came to Bhutan from Tibet, and he is regarded as the unifier of the country as a nation state. So what happens is that because of the Buddhism arriving in Bhutan, the history, the culture and tradition of Bhutan is largely influenced by Buddhism and linked to spread of Buddhism in the Himalayas. So with the arrival of all the scholars, Buddhist scholars to Bhutan, what has happened is they have built zones. Now I'm trying to link what zones is, fortifications. And the zones, which is locally known as zones, the fortification housed Buddhist temple inside and administrative space from where they ruled. Because back then Bhutan was subdivided into many regions, and the regions were ruled by the chieftains. So they had built zone as part of fortification, and they had built so many temples and monasteries and stupas. So these are the pictures of the zones and stupas and temples in Bhutan. So this is a brief introduction to set the context why I want to present on zones. So these are the Buddhist, these were built by the Buddhist scholars and saints. So when I say zones of different era, what happens? Most of the principal surviving zones that are in use to date are attributed, as I said, to the religious ruler Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyal. So in the process of unification of the country, he has built chains of zones in the country, which housed administrative and religious buildings, a dual system of governance which he introduced to Bhutan. So you can see the figure of Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyal. So now, since most of the surviving zones are attributed to Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyal, we can segregate or divide fortresses into 3 different eras. So it's the pre-Zhabdrung zones, then we have Zhabdrung's era zone, and post-Zhabdrung zone. So I want to compare the different eras of zones. So this is the map showing chronologies of zones in Bhutan, the fortifications in Bhutan. So this is the Zhabdrung's era fortresses zone. The one on top is the first zone built by Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyal in 1629. So likewise, Paro zone was built in 1644, then Daga Tashiamsi zone built in 1648, and Drugel zone in 1649. So these are the examples, these are the pictures of some post-Shabdung fortresses. So we have Hinchi Zong, built in 17th century by the successor of Shabdung Namgyal, and the one which is here is the zone built by the government in 2002. So now when it comes to pre-Shabdung fortresses, most of the pre-Shabdung fortresses are in ruins. So therefore, in order to understand and analyze zones of different era, archaeological excavation, research, and documentation were carried out by the Department of Culture under the Royal Government of Bhutan. So these are some of the excavations that was carried out in Bhutan. So this is the first scientific excavation that was carried out. It is called Drafam Zone, which is situated in the central Bhutan. So it dates back to 15th century, and it was the winter residence of Chokordep, who is the religious local chieftain there. So this is the aerial photograph after excavation, and these are the some part of the excavated area. So likewise, we have studied Chukjaha Zone ruins. It's also located in one of the district called Paro, and it also dates back to 15th century. So this is the overview plan, and then the picture of the ruins. Likewise, we documented Hokso Zone, researched Hokso Zone, which dates back to 12th century. Now, the comparison between the zones of different era, I just want to show in the form of plan how the zones in Bhutan has evolved over the time. So these are the plans which we have documented. As I mentioned before, the number one is the plan of Hokso Zone ruins, number two, Chukjaka Zone ruins, and the number three is the plan of Drafam Zone ruins. These are all the plans of the pre-Shabdung zones. So what has happened during our archaeological research is that we came to understand from the archaeological evidences that the central tower, which is highlighted in blue, in all the cases was built first as maybe as a residence or the temple of the local chieftain or the leader. Then what happened? So when I say central tower, it is the tower shown here. So it is the same feature in all the zones in Bhutan. So this was built earlier in pre-Shabdung fortresses. Then after that, what has happened is they have expanded. When they have gained control over the regions, they have expanded and built surrounding structures attached to the tower. These are this is just to show as an example the surrounding structures around the zone. So then they have kept a central courtyard for festivals, for gatherings and meetings. So this is an example to show the courtyard system in zone. Now, when it comes to Shabdung zone, what has happened in comparison to pre-Shabdung zone, we come to understand from the surviving preserved zone that the central tower, which is highlighted in blue, and the courtyard was preconceived. It was preconceived plan by Shabdung Namgyal. He knew that, okay, the central tower, the main central tower which housed the residence of the chieftain or the leader and the temple, and the surrounding structure for the administrative space were built together with keeping a circumambulatory space which is highlighted in yellow. So post-Shabdung zone, now what happened in comparison to this, the two earlier zone, is that the central tower got shifted back again, as you can see in the picture. This is Tashigang zone in the east, built post-Shabdung by his successor. So now you can see the central tower is being shifted towards the end. Why do you think so? Because as and when he became powerful, then there were more people, followers under him. So there was religious functions, gathering, festivals. So what has happened? They needed a big courtyard. So that's the reason why it got shifted towards the end. So basically, to conclude and to interpret from this plant form typologies the evolution of zones in Bhutan is that the pre-Shabdung zones were primarily built as a defensive and political functions. The central tower, or Utse, as I've shown you, was built as a residence accommodating the religious chieftains. Then over the period of time in the pre-Shabdung zone, additional defense structures were added, probably due to expansion of Lord's household gaining control over the regions. Then what has happened in Shabdung Sira zone, it was a preconceived plan. They have used a central tower, which is centrally located with a circumambulatory space enclosed with the surrounding structures. And similarly, this indicates the significance of the central tower as a building that houses the main temple in the zone and surrounding structure for administrative purpose. The post-Shabdung zone, as I mentioned earlier, the design and form, it is design, form and function. There is a continuity in form and function and design, whereas the Utse structure, the central tower structure, are located towards the edge of the fortress complex to gain and form a huge goddess space for festivals and public gatherings. So this is in a nutshell how the zones in Bhutan has evolved over the period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Karman, very much. Please come, have a seat. Karman did a good job in sticking strictly to the time, but even less than what I expected. But we will now be opening up the session to questions, and it is my privilege to highlight some of the issues that have been raised by all the speakers. I won't take too much time, but what I found very interesting in all the presentations was the particularity of the topic that was chosen. Each of the presenters, starting with Dr. Reddy, focused on how in the particular location of Telangana, the coins historically evolved, especially with the Buddhist symbols, and he gave us a very graphic account of how this happened. When we moved into Gujarat, similarly, Mr. Singh was very, very particular about taking the examples from North Gujarat, and therefore there is a particularity to what is happening in North Gujarat, which probably is slightly different from what is happening in Southern Gujarat, and many of us did not know much about North Gujarat, and due to his work, so then again, there is this particular thing. Though they are talking about different themes, I'm trying to link up this session that highlighting particular features of a regional context, right? And then it was very enlightening to know from Professor Rana Singhe that the excavations he did at Rajmala, or the team that did along with the Indian collaborators, is highlighting a Buddhist site which is very unique, which is very different. So again, though Sri Lanka, we think of, oh, Buddhist, small, but within that context, there is such a unique rock-cut architecture which is different from other regions in Sri Lanka and of course elsewhere. And this of course raises the fundamental question. Buddhism went everywhere. They articulated those ideas in different forms, and they took into account the local resources, local skills, and local materials. Materials is very important, right? And subsisted on the environment that was available to them. And of course, Laura took us to the metaphoric space of Pakistan, which many of us can't visit, but then the Gandhara sculpture, the centrality of the various images that she showed us, again talks about how in the context of that area, generally, broadly speaking, the sculpture, the archery, a particular simple topic was to do a comparative analysis of the images that were available in the collection that she's familiar with and elsewhere, and then compare it with the epic images that are available from here. So, but of course, the main feature is the Swat, the Gandhara area, and so on and so forth. And of course, I don't have to say much. Buddhism is Bhutan, and Bhutan is Buddhism. But then, the way in which the fortresses articulate that sensibility of Buddhism is so unique again. So, I mean, these fortresses are essential, I do believe, not only as residences, but also to engage with the society. And being a very hilly terrain, mountainous terrain, they had to encompass their dealings within the fortress complex. And I really like the way he chronologically showed us how the structures also began to change. Maybe perhaps a little more about the excavated phase we may have wanted to know about, and I'm sure there will be scholars over here who are well versed in archaeology. I am not an archaeologist, but I have chaired this session despite the fact that I'm not an archaeologist. I'm very happy, and I want to thank all the presenters for making wonderful presentations within the time schedule. Now, Mr. Srinivasan did present, but he's given us time for questions, right? Because the tea is delayed, I do believe. So, may I now request everybody to raise their thing, please, introduce yourself, and also address the question to whoever you want. Yes, Amriti, please.
This is one actually complimenting Dr. Reddy for the first time showcasing Buddhist symbols on numismatic evidence. That is first part. Second part is that the Chalukyas, it is very interesting to find Buddha Padas on Chalukyan coins in the context of they have dismantled a Buddhist stupa at Durga temple, Aihole. Earlier, it continued up to 4th, 5th century CE. It was dismantled, and the question is that how could it be? On the other hand, they patronized what we call Brahmanical faith and excavated caves, constructed many temples. Even they represented Jaina Tirthankaras in Badami caves. But all of a sudden, how could they use Buddha Padas on their coins? It is contrary to their political ideology. Just please show some.
So, a related, one minute. We'll ask one or two more questions. A related question, Dr. Reddy, I also had, is that you highlighted the tree symbol and the Buddha Pada and the other symbols. But then there are many, as you said yourself, many thousands of coins you have seen that also did not have these symbols, right? So I would like to really know, I mean, of course, he's asked the question chronologically as to the ideology of the rulers. My point is that within the same period, there were coins that did have the Buddhist symbols. So maybe you could, any other to address Dr. Reddy? Yes, please.
Actually, sometimes we get the Vishnu Pada also. The symbols looks like a very similar. The best example is in Bihar, Gaya. There is a Vishnu Pada temple. So I don't know how to differentiate whether this is a Vishnu Pada or Buddha Pada. The concept of Vishnu Pada is earlier than the Buddha one, according to Hindu mythology. So this is a little bit, we have to be judged for that point of view. Thank you.
My question is to Professor Reddy. Have you found any Buddhist symbol in Jonapada Pansmart point? Is it early phase or late phase? Is it in the early phase or late phase of Jonapada?
Why we were impressed with the study of Indian coins, but for the coins, Brahmins probably would never have been discovered. It was only the Indo-Greek coins that gave us an idea to decipher the Brahmin as well as the coins. And of course, I didn't say that these Buddha Pada coins which were found are only thing is that they were made exactly like the coins, Chalukya, the 9 symbols on the outward side, reverse side. And all of their coins, if you study them, they are not named. They are all issued with the name, with the title and so. They were such a influence. inscriptions came out, they said that Daya Gajakesari is Pratap. Until we found that inscription, we couldn't identify the coins. Coins were there, they were lying there. We didn't identify. So we were surprised that from technology point of view, these Buddha symbols, coins are unique. Not just one and 290 coins. Along the Krishna River, in the book, Raghu area. So it only I could explain that is that probably there were some pockets of Buddhism which were there, even though rest of the area during Chalukya period veered towards Hinduism and then Jainism. When it comes to Vishnu Pada, I just don't know. I had to see those Vishnu Pada. We have to tell that. In our parts, the Pada symbols are there, then we only think about it. Yeah, very early. Because no 20 Janapatha coins we know. Magadha, all the coins and so on. And then we have got the biggest number of coins came from Singapore. Singapore is the biggest code of 60,000 plus of early Janapatha coins and so on. You know, all these other coins are there only 200, 2 dozens and so on. But when it comes to Singapore, large number of symbols. Not every coin may have it, but same king may issue different types of coins. So some symbols may be there and some symbols may not. But of course, when you have got that clean label,
So everybody knows how indebted we are to Dr. Reddy for all the points that he studied. Now, can we have questions for the other papers as well? Generally, any scholar on Sri Lanka, Swat Valley, Bhutan, Gujarat. While people are thinking, Mr. Singh, I wanted to ask you that the image that you showed us of the Bodhisattva, which was that Bhikkhuni Sangha, which Peter Scale, yeah, right. So the inscription is just below the image, right? Right. Now, are there other examples at the same site of Bhikkhunis donating to the Sangha, or was that a unique example?
In Gujarat, there are other examples. The sister of the blood would say, seeing that there is so many conditions, there are so many corporate. Another example is I have bronze. That is also a donation of the Bhikkhuni. Touch. This is the third example. We find that the monastery in the habitation. Again, the monastery away from it. Here within the very small. We were wondering why inside. Then there before the Bhikkhuni, they are allowed inside the habitation.
Very good evidence, and also it reflects on the major numbers of Bhikkhunis who were probably inhabiting those monasteries. This is a very strong tradition in Gujarat of many women becoming Bhikkhunis, even in the Jainism also. Yeah, this is something that is all this historical evidence supports that. Yes, this side, I don't see anything else there. Any further questions?
Yes.
Yes, please.
I have a question on esteemed speaker from Bhutan. Can you please throw some light on the architectural principles they have actually followed in constructing those courtyards and those central towers and all? We call it as Vastu in India. Any of such sort of things, some principles they have followed? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. It's actually since the zones, the fortresses were built. I didn't have time to show the pictures. I thought it's just 15 minutes, so I'm so sorry for not showing all the pictures. I had to remove most of the site. But zones, when they were built in Bhutan, during those times, there was the site the site chosen for construction of the zones were strategically located. For instance, it was built high up in the ridge of the mountains. Otherwise, it is built in between the confluence of two rivers for the defense purposes. But in the pre-Jabrun zones, which I showed the archaeological documentation and survey we did, there was defense trench as well to protect from animals and enemies. Likewise, when they built, they kept, we don't particularly follow any kind of vastus, but considering the site, the orientation, where, for instance, the central tower as a significance, they were kept located in between, so that there's a temple and people can move around. The entrances usually face east, just to receive the sun. Somehow it is it's built mainly in accordance to the climatic and the site conditions. But considering the importance of the temple or the monastery inside, they have kept centrally located. Thank you.
In Sri Lanka, he has mentioned that they could locate Mahendra's stupa, relics and stupa. Is there anything like that for Sanghamitra? I'm not aware. They could find some around that area, some such thing.
Thank you, sir. Yes, we don't have, but in that area, it's because in the eastern parts of Sri Lanka, she was in the central Sri Lanka, it's Anuradhapura kingdom. And you know, she's Bhikkhuni, and she was a long time in Anuradhapura. Arhat Mahinda, we don't know, he was there in the Rajagala, but relics brought to the Rajagala. I believe, and according to the chronicle, the both of them were in Anuradhapura. But after their death, they distribute the relics. And we have a small stupa in Anuradhapura that built for the Sanghamitra Arhat Thera for her relics. But we didn't found there. And we have very valuable chronicle evidence. There were 500 Arhat Bhikkhu in Rajagala. We have the three centers in Sri Lanka. One, the base center is Anuradhapura. It was the blue in the Buddhism. And the second center in the southern province is Situlpavu. Third center is Rajagala. It's a three major centers. So they distributed that relics, that centers. Maybe not they lived there.
Okay, thank you so much. And you want to ask a question? Well, that's the last question. Sir, please.
According to your Mahabhamsa, you said that Buddha visited Sri Lanka for 3 or 4 times. Any archaeological evidence you have that?
No.
So this is on a good note. That's a good question. That's a good note.
But,
we didn't have any except for
Yes, so we have historical evidence, the Mahabhamsa and other chronicles, but we don't have that a physical evidence.
Or any structural remains of 6th century BC?
No. But we have punchmark coins and other. Buddhism. Yes, Buddhism.
Okay,
We don't have.
Yeah, right. So that's on that note. We should not impose textual materials, and even if Mahamudra is a chronicle, we all know that it was written at a later time, so there is a recollection of memory on actual reality, tangible thing. That's a little problematic. We will leave it at that, and I take this opportunity to thank all the speakers for being such wonderful speakers, sticking to the time and giving us wholesome presentations, which we all thoroughly enjoyed. Thank you all very much.
Madam Chairperson, with your kind permission, I would like to add one more thing in this session. Actually, I was about to present my paper, that is Bhavapur Guru, Ajanta to Bhavapur Guru, Telangana perspective. Wait. Actually, last month I visited Punjab, and very coincidentally today, Punjab Tribune has carried the article on Sangor, a wonderful stupa. 2 stupas are there, and this is unofficial paper officially making it part of this seminar from Punjab.
So you got included.
Yeah.
But we should give credit to Srinivasan's unique ability to re-enter the seminar.
No, I wanted to invite the person, Teja Singh. He's an unsung hero. He was behind all the excavations. In the general session, I wanted to invite him to felicitate him, but he is not well. So this article was sent to Tribune long back means 20 days back. And this appeared today very coincidentally today morning. So this makes an official entry into the session from Punjab.
And it's very interesting. It says Uchapinda.
Uchapinda.
Uchapinda means like Pinda means village. So Uchapinda means like a heart.
Yeah, Uchapinda, the mount of Punjab. We have 2 beautiful spots.
Actually, it's a mound of
Mount. So this will be distributed to all. So this is one.
So we include in our itinerary Punjab as well all the way to Pakistan.
So another 2 or 3 announcement I would like to make. One thing is publicly from the dais I would like to apologize to my friend Karma Tenzin from Bhutan, because due to some my mistake, his abstract is not in this book. Yeah, I think. Is there? Acha, you are saying that it is not there. Then I wanted to apologize immediately that it is not there. I don't want to read. So, right. Second thing is, after this session, after the tea break, Dr. Kiran Shahid Siddiqui from Takshila Institute of Higher Ancient Civilizations, Islamabad, is joining us on live. Here she will be presenting a paper on Takshila Buddhist Center of Higher Learning. So we tried, because she could not get visa. Now she will be online presenting her paper post tea break. That is one thing. And last one is, we are making some changes to the whole schedule. Instead of this 4 o'clock session, open house discussion, the valedictory session will be at 4 o'clock. Since the minister is coming at 4 o'clock, 4 to 5 will be the valedictory session. And after the session, we will be having this open house session. So this is a small change we had to make. So this is now, with the permission of the chairperson, we can start this memento distribution.
Years ago, I visited Pointon and asked somebody about your father. Maybe Prabhu Chattopadhyay. He told me that he is no more. Then he informed me that about his son is not. Then I know.
So tea break 15 minutes. The next session just I'll announce the names.